Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Derek and Clayton podcast, Unlocking Your Leadership Potential. We have a very special guest here going to be talking to you today. Her name is Dr. Carolyn Rowan. And the first, she want to tell you a little bit about early childhood development. But welcome, Dr. Rowan. Can you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Clayton and Derek, for having me here today. I would like to begin by telling you a little bit about my background and why you should be listening to me as an expert in early childhood. I received my bachelor's degree in special education from Southern University. Then I went on to receive my master's of education from Southeastern University in supervision and leadership with certifications in early childhood. And most recently, I received my doctorate of education in educational leadership from Southeastern Louisiana University. And I worked for 18 years in early childhood. I spent approximately 10 to 15 years as an elementary school principal. And after retirement, I got very active with a nonprofit that I started in 2008. And I began like an after school program because I wanted to continue my connection with children and helping them to learn. And so I currently operate my nonprofit, and I serve as the director and president of Emmanuel Esther Project, and it's located in Independence, Louisiana. And our most recent project is with the Steve Carter Literacy Initiative, where we really help children learn how to read using hands-on experiences and having those interactions that really, really help them when they're having problems.
Man, awesome. That is, I would classify you as a subject matter expert in the area of early childhood education. And if anyone, if that our public need to be listening to, it definitely should be you, Dr. Rowan. Definitely should be you. So I'm pretty sure you got some pretty valuable information as it relates to early childhood that you're going to be sharing with the public on why they should really take developing their kids early on um, to establish that foundation. We know uh, building anything, it takes a solid foundation, and that early childhood education is the foundation for young people's success, not just academically, but also just in life and be able to go out and function in life. So I'm looking forward to hearing, all of this great stuff as it pertains to early childhood. Um, Question, Doctor, um, why is early childhood? Why do the public need to know the value and the importance of early childhood development, and why does it matter?
Oh, thank you, Derek, for that question. That's an excellent question. Can you believe that 90% of a person's brain development takes place between birth and 4 years old? And we consider early childhood to be between birth and 5 years old. And so if we compared a child's development, that birth to four, to a computer, you would look at it and say that the birth to four time frame is the same time that a computer programmer is inputting information into the computer, putting all the codes and things in there that computer will need in order to process all the information that it will receive. For example, they're putting in codes that will help it to get on the internet. They're putting in codes that will help it play a game. They're putting in codes that will help it operate a word processing program. They're putting in all kinds of things, all kinds of information to build that computer so it will be able to function throughout the time that you have that computer. So let's look at the child. When a child is born, that child is born with billions of brain cells, okay? And so, in order for those brain cells to form the cognitive um, systems and the physical systems and the psychological systems that they need, you have to make sure that you're inputting things. And that's why you'll see good parents, they will have mobiles, colorful objects for the child to look at. They will have times when they're doing little finger plays and movements with the child. They'll have time when they're holding that child up and letting their little feet touch the ground. And they'll have times when they have the child on their tummy in order to like help them be able to learn how to move and things like that. They're providing all kinds of experiences for that child because at that time, all those billions of brain cells need to be coded. They have to have information put in there where when they receive visible information, when they see things, then they know what their brains have been put together in a way that they can process that. And so when I was doing my research, getting my doctorate, one of the researchers that I looked at a lot was Liv Vygotsky. And one of the things that he said, it was very simple. He said, the more a child sees, hears, and experiences, the more that child will know and be able to assimilate. And unfortunately, the reverse of that is true. The less that a child sees, hears, and experiences, the less that child will know and the less that child will be able to assimilate. And so what that means is, okay, if we don't give the child what they need in those early years to develop those psychological systems that will process what they hear, what they see, what they experience, what they feel, they touch, they smell, all the senses. If we're not stimulating those senses and giving that child the experiences that they need to develop those systems, then when they get information, they're not going to be able to use it. And if you think about it, if you look at a child, when they are born, they can do very little. But inside that child's mind, everything that they see, everything that they hear, everything that they experience, they're taking it in and their brain is developing from that. And so we have to make sure that we develop a solid foundation, because if not, then it's going to be difficult. You can tell the rapid growth. I start to talk about that. You think about it. By the time a child is 3 years old, they've learned to speak a language. They've learned to walk. They've learned to talk. They've learned to feed themselves. They've learned all these things, hopefully, if they've been properly stimulated. And so once they've learned those things, they build up their physical psychological system, they're building their cognitive psychological system, and they're building their mental or psychological system. And so you, like a computer, you might get upgrades, but once a child learns how to walk, he can build on that. When somebody says, okay, let's hop, skip, jump, they're building on that. But in order to build on that, they have to have those psychological systems in place.
That is an awesome analogy, and also for the parents and the public to know that there are some systems that relates to the child development. You know, we should tend to look at the child and just a child approach. But that was some valuable information, Dr. Roman, that I would like to just try to unpack. You know, again, from using analogy, a computer to a child, the brain. You know, that we need to understand that the child brain is like a computer. Input, process, execute. The execution is based on the input, right?
You're
So
right.
if you're putting bad data in, you're going to get bad data. If you put no data in, what kind of data are you getting out? So from that birth to 4 year old time frame, we definitely need to make sure we're mindful of the things that we're inputting into this computer, so to speak, into the brains of a kid. And we're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, that a kid needs to be able to go back and uh, remember, just like a computer can go back and get that information, you can retrieve that information. A kid can go back from their cognitive skills and remembering in order to grasp that data and process it and change that data into knowledge that's applicable, that they can apply. That is some powerful information that our parents definitely need to be mindful of. That, hey, we need to be mindful of what our kids see and what they hear, because that's the windows that how that information get into the computer, to the brain. I know when we were growing up, our elders were very mindful of what we seen and what we heard. You didn't get a chance to be around adult kind of conversations. You couldn't hear what adults were talking about. You couldn't see what adults are doing. But I think a lot of our kids are being exposed to some information that they don't need to be exposed to right now, which in turns uh, kind of determines what their uh, performance, is. I mean, they're a blank canvas. That's a blank hard drive, and we need to make sure we are properly coding it to ensure that the execution is what we're looking for in our early childhood development. I mean, that is some good information to me, Dr. Roman. Hopefully, our public and parents, our first line leaders of parents, are paying attention. Early childhood center should be an extension of the home, right? So those things
Correct.
need to be going on in the home and also reinforced at the early childhood level.
Mhm.
So, but go ahead, Dr. Roman. That's some good information. I consider myself to be a lifelong learner, so I'm learning. I'm learning, so in hopes to be able to pass this information on, because I think more of the world needs to hear uh, how this this being that we know as a child is developed, and it's very important to develop that early on, that foundation, because it determines how they go out and socialize and function in the world.
But I also like to add a little bit to that. I like the analysis that you use and using the computer. And by me having a little background in computers, is what Derek said. The computer going to operate what you put in. They call it garbage in, garbage out. Other word, what you put in is what you're gonna get out. And if you got a good storage, and you can store a lot of memory, but again, that start at early childhood development. And the way that you put that out there, I think is very simple. I think it is something that each parent should take a look at. Look at the cause and the effect as to why their kids are not developing the way that they should. So that is some very powerful information. And my next question is, why is this so important for early childhood development? Why is this so important?
And does it have a impact on the kids' academic development?
Yes. Okay. So let me go back. I was looking at my notes, and one thing that I wanted to do, I always like when I tell parents and people information about the things, how important early childhood education is. I had some examples of things they should be doing. A
Mm.
lot of times we talk about what they shouldn't do, but we forget to tell them what they should do.
Oh yeah.
So in order to help the brain process, we should be talking to the children because they're developing their language. We should be caressing, loving, talking to them in a positive way, using positive words of affirmation with them
Mm.
because we're developing their little psyches. How they feel about themselves is affected by the words that we use with them.
Oh
And
man.
also, we
Can
want
I, can
to
I
be.
pause? Can I pause right there for a second, Dr. Roman? That's major. That's powerful. Clayton and myself, we've been discussing that self-awareness piece. as it pertains to leadership, you know, and we're talking about teaching these kids, these children between the ages of 0 to 4, self-affirmation, self-awareness, self-esteem. How do you esteem self? Because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you don't learn that early on, that could be very detrimental throughout this walk,
That's
this
true.
journey that we call life. But that's power. I'm sorry, I just had to bring note to that right there.
Yep.
That it's
Oh, and I
very important to teach our kids self-awareness, self-affirmation, and self-esteem early on. That's the foundation for success in any capacity. If it's academics, if it's spiritual, if it's
mhm.
physical, if it's career, self-awareness, self-affirmation. Sorry, I just thought I had to
Right.
point that
And
out.
yes, and that
It's
goes a lot along a lot with it. Because if you don't believe, if you haven't developed your self-esteem, your self-confidence, you're already feeling bad about yourself. And it's very hard for you to learn when you feel bad about yourself, and when you enter school and um, other children know their colors and shapes
mm,
because their parents have bred to them, and they can answer questions. And so a child that shows up at school that's already feeling bad about themselves are just going to feel worse. And when you feel bad about yourself, it's hard for you to perform cognitively,
wow,
academically. It's hard for you to be successful. So I'll move on to our
powerful.
the next question that you were asking, um, about whether it matter. Why does it matter? Why does early childhood matter? Um, and it matters because by the age of 4, the number and types of experiences that your child has had is either going to wire them for success or wire them for failure.
Wow.
So just think
Oh,
about that.
this.
But that,
So
but what I'm understanding, they are going to be wired
they're going to be wired
for
either way.
success or failure.
It,
So we have to determine as parents and grandparents and just adults in these young people's life, how are we wiring them? Are we
mhm,
hardwiring them for success? Are we
Mhm.
hardwiring them for failure? Oh man.
yep.
Go ahead, Dr. Rowan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, that's okay. I love it when you
You're
jump in
igniting
there.
my fire here.
Yes, and look, when you're asking your questions, you're helping enlighten my little, bringing up my little educator inside of me. Um, so okay, so let's look at it. All right. So do nothing with your child. So just like feed them, clothe them, put them down somewhere, sit them down, and just let them do whatever they want to do. You're wiring them for failure.
Mm,
Okay, because you're not even teaching them to attend. They don't even know how to attend. So
wow.
in order to learn, you have to learn to listen and be able to process what you're hearing.
Good.
So the more times that, okay, so that's when you wiring them for failure. um or when their brains need to hear the nursery rhymes and the little twinkle twinkle little star, and you have them listening to I don't know.
Back that thing up.
Yes. Okay. You're not developing. Ooh, you're developing something, but
Right, right. And it's just realistically speaking, because, you know, if I could be transparent, Dr. Omer, if I can be transparent, um, I became an early parent, a young parent, as a teenager, and I wasn't aware of the stuff that you're referring to today, you know, and I used to ride around and play that kind of music while my daughter was in the car. And my wife, you know, used to bring that to my attention. Hey, you need to be mindful of the stuff that you're playing while she's in the car with you because she's listening to that, you know. And we need to make our parents aware now that the stuff that you're listening to as a developed mind adult, you know, you got to be careful what you're programming your children to. They just a blank canvas, and what they see and hear support on
Right.
their wiring.
Mm-hmm. And so basically back to Vygotsky, who was one of the leading researchers that I use, he says that everything that we learn from social interactions, and we learn from the social interactions that we have with others. And so it depends on the social interactions that you have. If you have a social interaction with your parent, where your parent is sitting down reading to you, you're going to learn to read. If your parent is cursing you, you're going to learn to curse.
Mm.
So the children are going, especially during that birth to 4, those billions of brain cells are going to form systems. Will they form a system for being able to curse well or read well? It is up to you, what you put in. And another thing is to provide lots of experiences to wire your child's brain. You want to talk to them about number. How old are you? Are you 1? Are you 2? You want to teach them their birthdays and things like that. So again, it matters. So let me look at my notes again, because I have to keep myself organized so I can
Okay.
stay on
And
topic.
while you're looking, Dr. Roman, I want to, what I'm hearing, that children are smart, but it's how they are smart. If they
Mhm.
gonna seem like they can perfect what they learn, if they gonna being taught to curse, they gonna perfect it. They're gonna be smart at cursing, right? But if they're
Correct.
taught and being taught their ABCs and one, two, threes, they could become just as smart at, So, oh man, this is good stuff. Definitely need to be mindful of. And if I could put a little spiritual turn to it, twist to it, it tells us in my spiritual teaching. I'm not referring to anybody else's teaching, to train up a child
Mhm.
in the way that they should go. So, but we're
Exactly.
training, but what kind of training are we giving them?
Mhm.
That's I'm
And you
kind of
don't have,
getting a little
yeah.
excited there. So,
Mhm. So like I said, you are wiring them. You're definitely wiring them, whether you do anything or whether you do lots of things or whether you do the right thing or the wrong thing. You are wiring them either for success or for failure in
mm,
society. And so I think I basically covered all the parts of your question. Um,
If I can ask you one question, Dr. Roman,
sure.
based on everything that I've heard you discuss, so you become part of your environment in which you live, the
Mm-hmm.
way that they think, the way they act. And my question to you, if I've been taught bad English for 10 years, how long do you think it would take me to learn proper English?
Yes.
You think it would take me twice as long as than it took me to learn that bad, or maybe I never would correct it totally?
So as you move out of early childhood, you can learn new things, but it's more difficult for you to learn them.
I got you.
So we continue to learn. We continue to get upgrades. Like you, you may learn to speak English, and as you get older, in our culture, you may have learned to speak Ebonics. Okay, but once you go to school, you do have a language. You have a foundation for language in your brain, and you can receive upgrades just like a computer can be upgraded. You can continue to build on that foundation, but the earlier you do it, um the better. And it is harder than when you were a baby or when you were in birth to 4 to learn, because you think about it, like I said, by 3 they have learned to most children have learned to speak in complete sentences by then. So they've learned a lot.
okay. Anything to add to the why it matters or how does it affect academic success, Dr. Roman?
Oh, one of the things I wanted to call to your attention was that I had in my notes. So, all those billions of brain cells, if by 4 you haven't given the proper input, for example, like when we're born, we have everything, all the brain cells we need to develop, to be able to speak French, English, Spanish, or whatever. Okay. But we only get exposed to English. So guess what? The brain cells that we need for French, they're going to die off. So in essence, that might be like a broad example, kind of over elaborated,
No,
but
I think that's great because
yeah,
the world that we live in now is a global society, and for parents and early educator providers, hey, we need to expose our kids to, because we see that um, we live in a diverse culture, a diverse society right now. So to learn those, different languages is something that our kids need to be exposed to.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So
yeah. So basically, the point that I was trying to emphasize is that if some brain cells begin to die off, if they're not stimulated and they are not forming into like different psychological systems, they begin to die off. And that, Clayton, makes it harder for you to learn. And usually, if you teach a child a foreign language early, then they can, like a lot of children are dual language. And the reason that they're dual language is because early on, they took advantage of all those brain cells for all those languages. God just made us so, He created, we're such an awesome creation, the way that He developed our brain and everything. And so um, we need to take advantage of it early, or it will begin to decrease.
It does all kids learn at the same pattern or same at the same time? What about kids that may have some type of a learning disability? How
Okay.
does that affect?
So, um, so I would say learning disabilities are created. Okay. Now,
mm,
when I say like, when we look at a disability, like a physical disability, when children are born with like a birth defect that has affected their brain capacity or their brain development,
Mhm.
then still they're born with some brain cells. It might not be as many, as
I got
many. And so when I worked with special ed, we would get the children like at 3 years old and work with them early, because we knew that the best time for them was also this time frame.
okay. All right. So um, by not properly educating through early childhood development turns into these things as we know as accommodations now,
Mhm.
because we lack of the lack of training or the lack of being wired properly. So now we have to go and offer accommodations because this child wasn't developed properly. Would that be fair to say, or that's kind of
That would be fair to say, because if 90% of your development is taking place between birth and 4, that only leaves 10%. Okay.
mm,
So if you're not getting that 90% as your good foundation, it sets the child up for failure. It really does.
I guess it's like muscles. If you don't use them, you lose them.
Hmm.
So
Right.
uh, and if I can rewind for a second, Dr. Woman, is I think we need to make sure that we let parents know that you're either setting your kid up for success
Hmm.
or failure. What are the two? And I would kind of lean toward that most parents, if not all, would want their kid to be successful.
They
you
would.
know. And but I think some of them need to be aware of some of the things that you're giving today to make them understand that, hey, between birth and 4 years old is a very, very vital time in establishing a foundation for your kid.
True. Very true. Very true.
Okay, Count. My question is that what message that would give parents at this time is, since you said we have billions of brain cells, what about those parents that's, they may not be able to understand or comprehend and not realizing that affect the kids' ability to learn? So at the age of 2, if the kid have not developed those certain cognitive skills, is it too late, or they done lost out or missed out on something?
So this is what I would say. Like Derek said, a lot of parents are young parents
Mm-hmm.
and they may not know what to do. But you, like I always say, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know where to find it. And so when we think of um, child care centers, daycare centers, where our children are a lot of times when we are working, um, throughout the years, ever since like 2012, and even far back as the 1960s, we have realized that parents may not know what to do with their children. And so that's why Head Start came about. And that's why like your daycare centers came about. And so in 2012, I know we're kind of running out of time. So I'm just going to hop down to another subject.
No,
In
just keep
2012,
going. Don't worry
in
about the time.
in 2012, it was decided that all daycare centers were not equal. Okay,
Mm,
all centers were not equal, and so research was done to find out what is it that parents and educators can do to help a child during these crucial years. And one of the things they came up with was interactions. That's the key word, interactions. What you say and what you do with a child. And so in 2012, Louisiana passed like Act 3. And in Act 3, every organization, every childhood provider that receives funds from the state, they have to go through what we call the class assessment. And class is an abbreviation for acronym for classroom classroom screening system, and it has where they're requiring that everyone focus on emotional support for children, and they focus on instructional support, um, and just creating a positive learning environment for the children. And so if parents cannot, and they may not have the tools to do that, and so now they're requiring every daycare. They have programs for toddlers, infants and toddlers, and they have programs for early pre-K, and they require that they teach a certain way, they speak to the child a certain way, they interact with the child. One of the things that they're very big on is critical thinking and helping the children answer why questions, and kind of like doing things to pique their curiosity, and reading to them and just making them very curious and lifelong learners, and teaching them how to attend, and giving them something to attend to. Some children don't have anything to attend to. Sometimes they're just like put off in a corner. Nobody talks to them. Nobody reads to them. Nobody purchases educational toys for them. And so we're, as a society, are trying to help parents who may not know. And so the parents don't have to know everything, but they have to be able to get to someone who does. And so We have different trainings that are going on for the people in the daycare centers to help them learn the type of interactions that help children help their brains develop properly.
Yeah. And I think we need to also make the public aware, kind of rebrand this word called daycare, to make people understand that this is just not a babysitting service, that we're here to offer early childhood education,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, from birth to 4 years old. So even babies, it's some things that should be done in daycares or early childhood development centers to help with those developmental skills.
Mm-hmm. And
And
see, like,
definitely on how we are speaking, that to ensure that you are speaking those words of affirmation. And when kids make a mistake, that's a teaching time frame to look for another answer, a better answer. It's not time for to ridicule and, you know, it's to make them think through the problem solving method and to learn how to solve problems.
correct, provide rich experiences for them that will give them a foundation for math skills and reading skills, and the basics starting at number one, teach them to attend, because if you can't sit down and listen, then you can't learn. You
Yeah,
have to have interactions with the children.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
And if I could just say this, and I don't mean to be negative, when you say that learning ability take place at between the age of 4, uh, I can reflect back on the time I was going back to school. It's just a lot of us was in those grades, and we should know how to read, but we haven't developed reading skill at the same time. We already feel bad about it because we didn't get that learning, and we feel like, well, why should we learn? They're gonna laugh at us anyway because we don't. I mean, have you experienced that in your career?
So I think it's up to the parents to set well, they set the tone whether they're trying to or not, but it's up to the parents to build that child's self-esteem um during those crucial years. And because usually the first experiences that a child has is with the parents, and when you talk to your child, even when you talk to your baby, and you look at them and you smile at them and you spend time with them, and oh baby, mommy loves you, all the kisses and things like that, that is telling them that they are loved and that they are worthy of someone's attention, and they're worthy of good treatment and things like that. And so the parents are setting the tone for that um, at home. And unfortunately, um, sometimes children are abused, verbally abused, physically abused, and therefore they're not going to have a good self concept. And then when they get to school, because they have not been read to and things like that, learning becomes harder for them, and oftentimes they do get picked on and bullied. But hopefully we can have positive experiences at home, positive experiences in early learning centers. Instead of calling them daycare centers, we're going to say early learning centers, because they are learning some vital skills in childcare centers before school.
Dr. Roman, would it be fair to say that just as important as early childhood education, that parenting education, we need to have some parenting education classes as well, so to make sure that our parents, that they want to know how, and they really don't have the ability to do the research, that we have some classes that can teach them some of the things that we're talking about today, to really set their kid up for success. Just parenting classes, because like Clayton said, a kid is tend to be a product of their environment. They go to the daycare or the early learning development center and they take one step forward, then they go back home and they take 2 steps back. So it's teach and reteach, because they spending more time in this negative environment versus this positive environment. So if we can give our parents some tools that's necessary, you know, to help the development of a child, I think that would be, you know,
So,
pretty good.
hey, Derek, I tell you what, I never thought of it that way, but I think because a lot of parents don't know about parenting.
Mm.
They having the babies, but they still don't understand the importance of how to raise them and nurse them. But I'm glad that you brought that subject up to Dr. Roman.
Yeah, that training element, in our world is that training element. And again, my spiritual teaching teaches me that you should train up a child, and it's much more than just providing food, water, and shelter.
Mhm.
It's a training element that goes with that as well. And we talked about just leadership.
Yep.
That parents is that first line leader that
Mhm.
kids are exposed to, and we're going to be trying to give it to them by way of leadership. We're not calling parenting. There's some people is not as receptive as others, and you ain't gonna teach me how to be a parent. You don't even
Right.
but be mindful of that leadership, that you're providing leadership to your children, and not everybody is aware of how to be an effective leader, just like being an effective parent. So I think we possibly need to possibly start offering some leadership slash parenting class. So for those parents that really want their kids to go out and be successful, so that's my little 2 cents, my thought process. But I'm gonna yield to the subject matter expert. Reel me in, Dr. Roman, if I'm going too far down left field.
Well, as you were talking, my mind went back to our history, especially our culture. In our culture, we are Black Americans are very unique. Okay, so as we go back into history, we were not allowed to parent our children years ago. Okay,
Mm.
so because we were in slavery, we were not allowed to read. Okay. And a lot of times we were separated from our children. And so as we come down from generation to generation, we don't have the parenting skills unless somebody somewhere broke that generational curse
Mm.
and got educated about parenting. It just doesn't come naturally sometimes because we weren't allowed to function naturally for so many years that we were in slavery. We were not even allowed to have our natural affection for our children because sometimes they were like taken away from us, like I said, and so yes, we do need parenting skills. And I think that once I became an educator, it became natural to me. And so,
Mm.
but a lot of parents are not like that. And as educational leaders, as leaders in our community, we need to like take each parent where they are and do all we can to educate them and let them know how important early childhood is.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, because you know we can look at parents, out here in the social world and assume that they are effective parents or they have those parental skills in order to develop. But that's not necessarily true. Sometimes a person only can give what they have. And so,
That is a true
and
statement.
so, and I think we got to make that have a little more readily accessible for our parents. So because we do have those traditional curses that's been passed down from generation to generation. And just to speak of one is, uh, hey, don't pick the baby up when they're crying. You're gonna spoil the child. You know, that's that baby's form of communication. You
Mm-hmm.
know, between 0, 1, and 2, that's their how they communicate. They might be telling you that they're wet. They might be telling you that they're hungry, they're hurting, and that parental neglect can cause a distrust in a child. The person that's supposed to be nourishing me and providing and protecting me is just put me over in the corner and let me cry. But I just need to be held and coddled. I just want to feel that affirmation of being loved. And that bond is being broken
Yes.
early on.
Yes.
Now this disdainment is growing between parent and child. You know, so I think our parents need to be aware of the things that's been passed down from generation to generation that's really not effective parenting.
Yes.
Uh, I certainly appreciate you, Dr. Roman.
Oh, I've got another question.
Okay.
Another question for Dr. And it's pertaining. I think she touched on it a little bit about selecting an education provider, early childhood education provider for our young people, and if all early childhood development centers would be considered equal, you know, and how can you elaborate on the, I guess, the selection process, or it doesn't matter? Just make sure that you're putting your kid in some early child
Hmm.
education center.
The short answer to that is no. All early childhood programs are not the same. And the reason that I can say that is because the research shows that about 2021, research showed that about 80% of the children had access to early learning centers, Head Starts, and private early learning centers. Okay. But still, 47% of those children entered kindergarten already behind without the readiness skills they needed to learn. They didn't have
47%.
47% entered. So that means that 53% of the children were ready to learn when they arrived at kindergarten because they had all the things, all that brain development. Okay.
That's
Only
amazing.
53%. And then you
That,
have
that,
that
that, that,
47%, even though they were in the early childhood programs, they were still having difficulties. And so there are some qualities. I talked about the class. There are some qualities that parents can look for when they visit their child's early childhood center, whether it's Head Start or wherever. They want to look for whether the children are sitting over by themselves, doing whatever they want to do, or if the educator is engaging with the children, if she's over there talking to them as they doing their puzzles. Oh, where does that piece go? Oh, how do you know that? If they're over there with the children helping them do the puzzle, or if they're over learning about counting, like, oh, how many do you have there? And they're engaging. Okay, they're doing things with the children and talking to children. And so you can see that as you walk in to bring your child in the morning. Some other children arrive before you. Are they sitting over in a corner by themselves, or they're being engaged with? Are the children talking? Are they talking to are they afraid to talk to the provider? Are they talking to other children? um are the educators providing like a good language model where they're using correct English and um being a good model for them for sentence structure and everything? Are they using positive communication with the children? Are they using kind words? Are they encouraging the children to be kind to each other? How are they disciplining the children? Are they taking, like, when a child does something, are they taking it as an educational opportunity to tell them what to do and how to do it? Are they helping them to control their temper or control their anger, because a lot of children come angry, they want to hit. Are they giving them other options in order to communicate with each other? Um, Check out the children's facial expressions. Are they looking happy? Are they looking sad? Are they looking like they're scared? Okay, so that's what I'm a class observant. When I go into a classroom, I'm going to check out the children's faces, and when I
Mm.
check out the children's faces, that tells me a lot about what's going on in that classroom. And so, are they providing instructional support? Are they helping the children learn to read? Are they reading to the children? Are they doing a lot of um, activities that will help the children learn math? Are they helping them to talk about size and shapes and colors and things like that? So, those are the things that you can look for. Do they have a lot of educational toys in that place? You know, so in summary, the parents can choose providers who are actively engaging with their children and providing them with many opportunities to learn, grow, and develop their brains.
Mm. Dr. Roman, that is some excellent information that our public and parents need to be aware of as it relates to early childhood development. You know, we're talking about the foundation, you know, really, really building a solid foundation to set our young people up for success. You know, so um, man, I really hate for this to end because I can sit here and talk and listen about this, you know, because as an educator myself in the high school, you basically answered a lot of the questions and that I have for some of our kids from 9 through 12 that are struggling academically or just their behavior, you know, their inability to problem solve, their inability to reason, their inability just to communicate. It probably stems from their early childhood development. You know, why we have it such a uh, the way that they resolve conflicts is by fighting. That's their way of expressing themselves because they don't know how to express themselves verbally. You know, so and this is why we're seeing what we're seeing at the high school level. You know, when I was teaching at a high school in Baton Rouge, they had a program that was called City Years, like some college students that were in the classroom tutors while the teacher were teaching. They was kind of an assistant, and they briefed us on a kid started to show the sign of dropout as early as the sixth grade
Wow.
because of those uh,
Sixth grade.
sixth grades because of being bullied because they can understand now that they're behind their peers. You know, um, when you start to give them red Fs and the inability to read and comprehend, and now it's more of an embarrassment. So it's I think we need to take a more proactive approach on developing our kids in early on between that 0 to 4 age range because it's needed.
It definitely is.
So, Clayton, any other questions for comments?
No, it just you live and you learn. Early childhood development is important, and when we reflect back on our kids, why our kids are failing in school, why our kid does not succeed as well, it falls down to early childhood development. You know, hey, you got to crawl before you walk. And
Mhm.
so when Dr. Roman, you said something about this slavery, how things have was taken from and generational curse, we need to get away from that. Uh, we have more of an opportunity to excel today than we were before, but charity begins at home, and I really appreciate that you're bringing this home and didn't sugarcoat it. If the shoe fit, parents got to be able to wear it.
Exactly, exactly. And Dr. Roman, I would definitely like the public to know this is not the last time they're going to see you. We'd love to have you back on. As we might need to have you to start your own segment where you out here teaching and making parents and the public aware of the importance of childhood education and giving them some of the things that they can do at home and not just wait to outsource those responsibilities to the childhood, that childhood development center and its extension of the home. We have a force and reinforce working together as partners. There's a partnership that's going on, so definitely would love to have you back, on a regular occasion to be able to educate the public, and our and hopes that our public become lifelong learners too. We don't get so old that we think we can't learn anymore. Even for our parents that wasn't properly developed as children and they're struggling with some of these things, these skill set that we're trying to teach our kids, that they too still can be updated, as you said. There is some updates. Hey, we can give them some updates, and you can give them some updates and make them, you know, be effective parents and leaders for their children to follow. Clayton and myself, we like to say, lead by example. Are you leading by a good example or a bad example? But you are leading, like you say, you are wiring. So we definitely need to be mindful of, preparing our kids for this journey that we call life. So here, Dr. Roman, we like to conclude our segments. How we start a race, ready, set, go. We like to conclude by saying ready, set, grow. So definitely want our viewers and listeners to become a part of who we are here at the Clayton and Derek podcast and be ready to grow with us. Uh, until later, Dr. Roman, have a great, wonderful day. Thank you for the information.
All right.
Awesome,
Thank you
awesome
for having
information.
me. All right.
Awesome. We're gonna all say it together. We're gonna say ready, set, grow. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ready,
Ready, set,
set, grow.
grow.
All right, y'all have a nice day and
All
God
right.
bless you.
All right.